lovely people, welcome to the channel. This is the monthly Q&A, this time for August 2021. Before we get into the video, we've only got a week left for the Natural Wonders Zine Kickstarter. We're almost halfway there. It would be really cool if anyone out there who is interested would check out the link. It is a Pride Month zine, specifically highlighting the green stripe, but there's a lot of other things, like a lot of information that a lot of the zinesters provided that's actually kind of cool. Like there's an entire section that is talking about LGBT plus things found within the natural world outside of humanity, which I found to be very fascinating, and it is backed up with like actual evidence. So if that's something that interests you, you can definitely tell that the artists and writers and poets, they all really put a lot of work and thought into their pieces, so I definitely suggest checking it out. And if it's something that you think you might be interested in, then please support the Kickstarter. It's all independent artists. I have a couple pieces that I had submitted to the zine, but there's around, I think, 8 or so other artists. Plus, of course, the organizer, Jamie the Burb. I enjoyed his twist on the Rose Thief, which was a different version of Beauty and the Beast. So definitely check that out, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be answering a lot of questions about Time Warp this time. This is all regarding my free not safe for work webcomic Dark Horse. Links are down in the description. Yeah, I just kind of want to get started. I've had an actual good month last month, so I'm feeling very positive, feeling good, so let's jump into this. The first question, this is actually not Time Warp related, but I did have somebody asking, when can we expect the revamp to return? We're actually still on break. I'm gonna try to get the cover done sometime this week. Exciting news, first off. When I completed Act 7, that's the end of Volume 1. So eventually, whenever I get enough interest, I do want to actually create a Kickstarter. I need to go back and do even more editing, but I want that to all be one book, similar to the Flip Side book that I reviewed earlier in the month. But that's in the far future, and I've got work to do because even within the print version, I've still got a few mistakes. A lot of times because I hurry, I need to stop hurrying. So this is something that I want to have several people look over before I even attempt to print something that's 170 some odd pages. So, but that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I'm trying to work on the Volume 2 cover as well as the Act 8 cover for the revamp. We should be expecting the revamp to come back in early October. I'll probably have it start at the beginning of the month to answer that question. But I wanted to share that information just because I feel like this is really a landmark, at least for me personally, that, you know, I've finally gotten Volume 1 completed. Yeah, so let's get into the Time Warp questions. First one. Where did the group go to? Where did they warp to? That does get answered a little later in the act. The pages have already been updated, you know, since this question, but they're actually somewhere in the Redwood, the Sequoia National Forest. So I'm trying to make sure that the trees look sufficiently massive, and at some point they're going to come across a tree that has, you know how like it, in some of the trees they've actually bored through the tree so that the path can go through it. I'm going to have them come across that. They actually are within what was formerly the national park. Obviously, the government's not really had an opportunity to get back on its feet enough to worry about our national treasures, but there's also not enough people really to be causing too much damage to the sequoias at this point in history in this story. Next question. How will they learn their magic? I'm actually getting ready to be drawing this. I'm working on, I have 3 pages that I just got done yesterday. I worked on them, for me, this was Monday, I'm recording on Tuesday. Yeah, I just got 3 pages done, and we're getting ready to have, like, kind of a, not so much of a montage, but they're going to be practicing their magic as they go along. There's going to be a little bit of comedy with Odysseus, but he's also going to be, his magic is going to be fairly useful because there is a lot of overgrowth, foliage and things that they're going to be coming across, and so his magic pertains more to plants and wood and things of that nature, so he's going to be fairly useful in the next few pages. So we're gonna see all of them doing a little bit of practice. So that's gonna be coming up in this act. That said, clearly they're not going to have mastered their magic in like a short walk or anything like that. They're going to have to be challenged, and a lot of this is going to be instinctual. Something is going to have to cause them to react, because this magic, as I've explained in other Q&A videos, it's really tied to their soul, and it's really more of an instinctual thing. So yeah, they're going to be learning a little bit of it as we go along in this act. This was kind of a silly question, but I always like the silly questions because I think they're fun. Where did you get the sound effect Zwarp? Zwarp. It's really, I am, okay, it should be no secret that I am awful with sound effects. It's something that I really need to force myself to work on. I need to be adding more sound effects. I almost always forget them unless it's something really obvious that I need to put in there. But, I mean, this isn't that complex. I'm not that smart, you guys. So it's basically just warp with a Z, because Z's are cool. I figured that would sound like, I mean, it sounds like someone teleporting, right? Warp. Anyway, that's it. I never said I was deep.
I never said I was
Oh, this was a really good question. Again, I say that, but I mean, all questions are good. Some of them they challenge me in a way that I have to think about. You know, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to explain this? So this specific one is, there's two that are making me have to think. Are the locations in the world of Dark Horse the same as reality? As, like, you know, the reality that you and I live in? And kind of the second part of that is, how is the Fae world, because they're going to be returning, right? They have been returning. How does that blend into reality? This is really kind of a complex question, but so first off, yes, this world, the map, everything, it's not like Steven Universe. This might be a type of alternate reality, clearly, since we don't have fairies in the world right now. But it is the exact same world map that you would have in our current reality, aside from, obviously, locations like Cerulean Orla, I think is how that's pronounced. It's Gaelic. That should be a hint, a little bit of Keisuma's background. I'll put it up spelled so that you can see how it's spelled, because I'm clearly mispronouncing it, because I mispronounce every language, because I'm awful. But obviously there's going to be a few locations that are not accurate to this world, which I'm sure the reader who asked that, you know, realizes that. I'm not, like, trying to act like I don't know that. But in regards to the fairy realm, that is still going to be in existence, but it's kind of, because it is in an intra-dimensional pocket, the way the Fae are handling it is that intra-dimensional space is not going to merge or meld with the real world. It's going to remain in that space. And for the Fae folk who decide that they don't want to return to the natural world, they are more than likely going to start pulling whatever depleted resources they need. They'll probably pull some of that in so that they can start the recycling process a little bit better than had been done in recent years. If that makes sense? So I mean, that part of this world is actually not going to be merging with the plane of existence that the Earth is in. It is going to remain in its separate location. It can be accessed, but it's not. It's like when you see things like kind of depicted in fantasy where they travel to a completely different world. There will be gateways to it, but it's not actually on the same plane of existence as our reality. I hope that makes sense. I hope that explains that well. And then the next question, does time travel leave a mark? Can that mark be traced, i.e. by Keisuma? And, you know, I think that I haven't really thought much about this, but if I'm going to be honest, it probably, I mean, if Shiniko is going to be able to trace anything, if she's going to be able to sense things or locate people, I feel that that would be an indication that time travel definitely does leave a mark on the continuum in a way that someone who is attuned to it would be able to trace or track. Clearly not something physical. Again, not everything is really physical. Sometimes things, at least in this fantasy story, are instinctual to the specific characters. And that is specific to, so far as we know, Shimiko. Probably not Keisuma, because she's not naturally attuned to time travel. This is not her domain. There are reasons why she is trying to time travel herself, and it has nothing to do with Kana, believe it or not. It has nothing to do with her powers. She has her own motivations that are going to be more of a surprise later on. But she specifically does not have the ability to see those tracks that are left. The only reason why she was able to have any influence in the past with Rensha was because of that spiritual connection. So she could trace her own part of her spirit that she had tacked into Rensha. For instance, she was not, none of the people who went back, like Oshin, Rensha, Rowena, Rowan, none of them were able to follow the exact path that Odysseus did, and none of them were able to figure it out. They just kind of were drawn to each other. They were in the same area, so they were able to find each other. And of course, people using magic. Odysseus used magic when he first saw the girls that one evening in his human form. And so that was something, since there's not any magic being used in the world at this point, or at least in this area, we'll say, that's how Oshin and siblings were able to locate where Odysseus was. It wasn't because they were tracing any of the tracks that he had left behind, if that makes sense. And likewise for Keisuma, she did not really know. All she could do, all she had was a little piece of her tagging along with Rensha. So that's really all she knew. Whatever Rensha was experiencing, she was able to experience it in a way. And of course, it wasn't like, it was more like, because most of her being was in the present, not the past where Rensha was, it's more of like, you know, having to focus on something on the corner of your mind, trying to see something out of the corner of your eye, because that was only a small piece of her. When he finally called upon her, she was able to invest more of her attention. So in the present, she probably would have been secluded or had dismissed everyone so that she could give her full attention to that and take over Rensha. I'm not trying to over-explain things here. I don't like to over-explain, but I do think it's kind of important to point that out. Who else would be able to actually trace that, you know, what marks have been left on time? Would be Kanma, which is why Kanma is integral to Keisuma's plans, is because she is a seer, and while she can't predict the future, she can see things that are in the past, anything that has come to pass, and kind of similar to Steven Universe, which I had this idea before Steven Universe, but she can see different pathways. This isn't like a new concept. Her version of predicting the future is more so seeing different scenarios that could come to pass and which ones are more likely. So that's kind of why Kanma is so important, which we'll go into more detail about that once we're at that part of the story. And those are all the questions that I had for this time. Those were a lot of good questions, always fun to answer, always fun to force me to think about things. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. That's all I've got to say. If you want to support the channel, I've got links and stuff down in the description, Ko-fi, Patreon, all that stuff. Otherwise, like, sub, do the bell thing, that stuff is cool too. But yeah, anyway, I'm done now. Thank you all for joining in. Peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.